Hello students, this is Kyle Fogle, your American Red Cross instructor, specifically with Illinois Valley Community College. We are covering our final chapter here for our COVID-19 all online classes. This is called Disasters for Remote and Wilderness Emergencies. This will be the last video. Please do be prepared to answer the questions that I will provide for you. I will provide a file which you can look at, you can print it out, you can look it on your smartphone, whatever you want to do. But what I'll ask you to do is email me your answers back. That will be through fog0845@yahoo.com. That is your multiple choice 30 question first aid exam. Once you've submitted those to me, I'll have a due date for you. I'll make sure you put that in the email then as well, or the Blackboard information, I should say. And next week we will continue with our final exam, which will be due the day of it being sent to you. So it's a one and done kind of situation. Be there, or you could say be square. Let's jump into disasters for remote and wilderness situations. Okay, being around where we're at, we have state parks, right? You could be out there a mile outside and not have any cell phone service. You have to be able to know what to do. We could have tornado situations like we had in Nateplate, Granville, okay, Utica. These past 15 years, we've had a lot of tornadoes in our area. We have to be able to know what to do in those situations if we're somebody that can help in that heat of the moment kind of aspect going on. There's all sorts of disasters that can occur other than just fires and tornadoes. There's hurricanes, other types of floods, natural disasters. The best thing we can do is be as prepared as possible in those situations and help those many people as possible. So that's going to require a lot of things like followership and leadership as well. You have to be determined on utilizing your skills, accumulating others that have the similar skills, and giving everybody specific jobs, you could say, to help individuals in dire need. So if you're one of those that is a leader, take on that responsibility. That's fine. Go ahead and assign topics. Say, hey, I need you two to go over and check inside that trailer, make sure everybody's okay. I need you two to go over there where we see that downed tree. I saw a guy over there earlier. Maybe he got hit. They might need some help over there. Nothing wrong with that, being a leader. But of course, when in doubt and you want to be a follower, that's awesome. Take direction from others that are maybe more well-trained, like an EMT, maybe a police officer, maybe somebody who is a medical professional, and they can help you help those other people then along those processes. Our primary goal, of course, is to do the greatest good for the greatest number of people in the shortest amount of time and as safely as possible. Okay? So leaders, what are you going to do? You're going to control scene safety. You're going to look at the big picture, and you're going to provide care directly as well as indirectly, meaning that you're going to provide care to individuals that need it, and you're going to tell other people how to give care then in those situations, especially for those more minor conditions. You can tell a lot easier than telling people how to deal with a major decision. That's something probably for you to directly be associated with for like CPR, right? Little things like that. You can provide evacuation directions for others if you're a leader, right? So, hey guys, okay, this is the best way to get out for the fire exit. Go that way. Help people that way. And then you can as a leader, you can depend on cooperation and assistance from others then, right? So you don't have to just take everything as it's your agenda, you got to do it. Others can take responsibility then too, and you can deal with some of maybe the more significant things going on. With followers, okay, you want to assume responsibilities for your assigned tasks. So if somebody asks you to do something, do it to the best of your knowledge possible. Okay, don't be afraid to ask questions and ask for help. And also provide the leader then with any information that you can provide with them so they can be helpful too. Knock it off. With our emergency action steps, they're still going to apply like usual. We're always going to do our check, call, care. We're going to check the scene for safety. We're going to check the person or persons. We're going to check for resources. We're going to call 911, and then we're going to care for conditions found, and sometimes they're going to require some additional skills. In your book, it has a great picture of it almost looks kind of like a trailer park where all this destruction has happened. And in that picture, we have downed trees, down power lines, metal thrown around. Okay, there could be people underneath some of these things. There could be dangerous situations arising if you try to go to that spot, right? With the down power lines, you can get hurt. So calling 911, we want to get our first impression first and foremost so we don't get hurt. let's call 911 and tell them about what's going on here. If there's any dangers that could threaten your safety or others' safety, right, we never want to put ourselves into those situations. And look for other impending problems that could arise. There's another picture, a drawn picture in the wilderness of things that could arise. For instance, the storm clouds in the distance. You know, if those are only minutes away, there could be very much a hazard going on. You need to find some shelter. There could be other things like raging water. There could be animal life, so on and so forth. I mean, it really depends on the situation that arises. But the main thing is make the scene as safe as possible, or remove the person from the scene if they are in a life-threatening condition. Our first step, like usual, is to check for an open airway, check for breathing, and check for circulation. Search for any bleeding from the head to the toe and underneath the clothing as well for these kinds of problems. And then for checking for disabilities of extremities, we want to go ahead and check the head, neck, and spinal cord, right? We want to make sure those are in alignment, but if there's any kind of other possible injuries, those are not going to be our primary concern. Our primary concern is going to be life-threatening conditions. So make sure they're breathing, give CPR if necessary, right? If there's extreme external bleeding, we apply direct pressure to those wounds. We'll go over tourniquets a little bit later on in this video too. Consider the environment also of the place that you're in, right? We don't want to create any further harm. So if it's somewhere cold, we want to get them warm. If it's somewhere warm, we want to get them someplace a little cooler. We're going to give care for those life-threatening conditions and check for any kind of non-life-threatening conditions too. Because some of those non-life-threatening conditions can become life-threatening over time. And sometimes they can become systematic, and that can create organ system failures, and then we can be very much worse off than where we were from the get-go. So look for any kinds of signals or signs of threatening injuries and life-threatening injuries. Take care of the life-threatening ones first and foremost. If you ever want to write down information as you're going, that's always a good thing too. Take notes, mental notes even too, especially if in a wilderness disaster, right? It might be hard to remember some things. Write them down if you have that capability. Resources, right? Resources that we could have in a wilderness disaster or a remote disaster. People, right? How many people are available to help you? Do you have a way to communicate or signal help? Whether that's a walkie-talkie, a cell phone, fire with a blanket, right? To create smoke signals, flare gun, little things like that. You know, whatever you have for communication purposes, utilize those things. How much food, water, and shelter do you have? Are there first aid supplies available? And do you have a means of transportation? Would that be okay to even do in the first place if we suspect a head, neck, or spinal cord injury, right? We have to ensure that bystanders are, for instance, okay, right? We need them to be okay to help us in that situation then too. Other things to do, we need to check environment for conditions or developing conditions that could endanger you or the persons involved. Of course, note conditions that make it difficult to get help, and then consider the need to move the person if necessary. Remember, sometimes we're going to have to leave the person in the position with the most adequate amount of gear, per se, with them to get help. That's just a possibility. Our first phase, though, that we always want to think about in these remote disasters is let's make a plan. We have 4 options. Number 1, stay where you are and call. Use a radio or signal for help. Okay, that's the first one. The second one would be send someone to get help or leave the person alone to go get help. Our next option would be to transport the person for help. And then last but not least would be to just care for the person where you are until the person is recovered enough to where you can move them on his or her own. The second phase after that is to execute that plan. So really think about what you're going to do before you actually set out and do it. What could cause more harm than good? The best approach to decide on then is how necessary is advanced help? How soon can it be there, or how soon can you get that person to that help? Really thinking about how critical their life-threatening condition could be. If there is a way to call from the scene, right, that's great, that's awesome. But if not, is there a way to signal? Is it possible to go get help? You have to determine those factors and how long it could take you to go get that help. Think about, is there a way to transport the person? Can I build some kind of dragging structure to lay them on so I can pull them? Are they in a position where it's impossible? Are they lodged between some rocks where I can't pull them out myself, right? All reasons to want to call 911, call and get some help, or get some help, assuming that it's not a life-threatening condition that they're in, hopefully. Other things then too, is the person healthy enough to where they can travel, right? If they're bleeding profusely, we can't apply direct pressure to their wound. We'd rather keep them in the position found and apply that direct pressure, control the bleeding first and foremost before we move that person. And also, is it safe to wait, right? What if there is ensuing, worse weather coming, like a blizzard or something like that? All things to think about. Moving forward, okay, calling for help. If you have the means to call quickly for help, give them all the necessary information. Make sure it's all ready and available for you, because you could get cut off at any time. You want to make sure you're giving them as much information as possible to help you guys in the long run. So give them specific information about your location, maybe specific landmarks to wherever you're at. You can use flares to mark your location. You may even need to send someone, okay? They might have to be sent a mile away to go find the EMTs and then direct them to where you are. So think about these situations. How could you do the best help and care possible? If there is no way to call and it's impractical to send someone, you can improvise with a distress signal. You could do signals in threes with a flashlight. You can do ground-to-air signals by shooting up a flare into the air, and just make sure they can be visible. Make sure they're auditory. Use a whistle, so on and so forth. If you are going to send someone for help, usually this is if signaling or calling is not an option. Now you have to consider sending 2 or even possibly 3 people. Have them bring information with them. So have them take notes indicating the condition of the persons or persons that are in those conditions found. Give them a map indicating the location of the persons. That way they can also find their way out too and find their way back. List of the members that are in the group, people that are left behind. Give them a list of number of people that are there, and maybe even the list of available resources that were left with those peoples that were in that situation. Describe the weather, the terrain, any accessible routes to the people that are going to be coming to help. And also then for immediate future and long-term plans, give them those informations. Did you give those people long-term plans for being in the stuck position that they're at? Send enough people back, of course, with you when you are trying to help those people. That's a big thing. And also send enough people that are leaving too to make the journey if necessary. So think about all these aspects, and it's kind of like, I guess you'd say, in the heat of the moment. You'll know what to do, per se. Of course, leave enough trained individuals at the scene if you are leaving people that are sick or in life-threatening conditions or even non-life-threatening conditions to care for those conditions found. Now, these are some considerations. Leaving a person alone, right? If you're going to leave the person alone, right, that means there's no way of calling or signaling. That means you're going to have to do some certain things to ensure the person is as safe as possible when you leave them. So number 1, write down your route, the time that you're leaving, and when you expect to be back. To leave that all with the person so they're aware. Leave them with plenty of food and water, even a urinal. Provide them with adequate clothing and shelter, protection from the ground. Make sure you've checked their splints and bandages, that they're all clean and as best as possible before you leave. If they're conscious, reassure them everything's going to be okay. And if they're unconscious, you can always lie them into that Haynes recovery position until you get back. If you are gonna consider transporting a person, okay, only do this, okay, consider only in means of transportation if it is available, meaning that you actually have a quality way of moving the person safely. Think of the considerations for extensive injuries now. If you have an injury that is very extensive, you may not want to move the person at all. You're going to create more irritation overall to the injury and maybe cause it to be from non-life-threatening to life-threatening conditions. Think about how far you got to move the person too, right? You're not going to be able to move somebody miles if they are unable to use their legs. It's not going to be very capable of you. So it's better in ways usually to stay put. And then plan a route, right? If the route's not a very safe route, it's very treacherous, very rocky, it's not going to be a very good idea to move the person, right? It's going to take you a long time to get to where you're going to go, and you could possibly even cause more injuries along the way. If you have somebody who can drive a vehicle, right, and you are the best person for giving care, you can stay in the back seat with that person and give care while that person's driving. Again, if you have access to that kind of vehicle. Other things we're going to look at now too. Let's see here. Bleeding, right? Bleeding for those conditions. Long-term management includes cleaning the wounds and protecting the wound from infection. What if you're stuck in a wilderness disaster for 2, 3, 4 days? We're going to have to make sure that we're cleaning the wounds periodically with soap and any available first aid materials, and using clean gauze to rewrap the wounds, ensuring that they're promoting healing in the first place. Let's talk about tourniquets real quick. This is something we haven't talked about at all yet, tourniquets. And this is only for the most profuse bleeding we could ever imagine, and we can't control it with direct pressure. So first and foremost, if you can, go ahead and pause your video and grab your triangular bandage out of your first aid kit. Here's my triangular bandage. What I'm going to do is I'm going to take the long ends, I'm going to roll it up into a circle. Great, now it's a rope per se. And a common vessel that is one that is extremely profusely bleeding that we cannot control with direct pressure alone would be like a femoral artery. Remember, arteries, arterial bleeding, it's going to be bright red, usually squirting out blood, even pulsating blood. Hard to control. Let's say it's on the thigh, because that's the most common place to see this kind of injury. So right here in the leg, more along the lines up into the thigh here. The femoral artery is going to dive down deep underneath the thigh into the back of the knee, but it can get severed at any moment in here. What we're going to want to first do is take a gloved hand with our gauze and apply direct pressure over that wound and hold that in place. From there, right, we need to try to apply pressure at the pressure point, which would be 1 to 2 inches proximal to that wound, right? And with a gloved hand, apply direct pressure with your palm as hard as you can. That can slow down blood to that position. So we're going to have to keep that direct pressure on the wound and then put that pressure point into play so it really slows the bleeding. Well, this usually doesn't work all on its own. Sometimes it's going to be better to use that tourniquet. So we have direct pressure on the wound itself. We can take a tourniquet by taking this rope that we made with our triangular bandage, wrapping it around the thigh, so we have the injury site here, right? We're going proximal. That 1 to 2 inches in front of the wound, we're going to take this, we're going to knot it as hard as we can right there on the thigh. From there, you're going to take a rod like a pen or a marker, and you're going to knot that in place around that then too. So I'm going to hold that in place. And make sure you do this quickly. It's going to be very important that we do this fast. Okay, so I created a knot around my pen. It's stuck in place there. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to just either clockwise or counterclockwise twist the pen in circles until we're creating more and more torque around the thigh to where it's cutting off that circulation. Yes, that's our goal in this one time, to cut off circulation. We're trying to prevent blood flow through that femoral artery from leaking out of that open wound. If we can apply enough pressure, right, we will be like a blood pressure cuff where we stop blood going through that vessel altogether. Our gauze with our gloved hand is still in place the whole time. We're applying direct pressure and having pressure with that tourniquet at the same time. The tourniquet should be very painful for the person. It should feel like their leg is almost going numb per se. That's because you've completely stopped blood flow through that vessel. We never want to release pressure. We want to keep that direct pressure on the wound, keep that tourniquet pressure going on there the entire time, and just hold and wait for the EMTs to arrive. This is our last, I guess you could say, way of dealing with an injury, our final way. The second we release it, right, look how loose it becomes. We want to make sure that we're continuously applying as much pressure as possible. So practice this on your own at home, right? Go ahead and make your tourniquet. You're going to wrap it around your thigh. You're going to tie it. You're going to take the pen at your knot. You're going to tie it into place. You're going to twist it clockwise or counterclockwise as tight as you can. It should be very painful in your leg. That is your goal. Pain is your friend in this case for profuse bleeding that you cannot control with direct pressure. So there's your tourniquet in a bottle. There are professionally made tourniquets sometimes in kits, which can be very useful. They will apply the pressure for you, so that way your hands are free to work on other wounds or really control that direct bleeding going on. That's only, again, if direct pressure does not fail, nothing else is possible, right? Help is not available, help is delayed, maybe also because of factors complicating delayed help situations, additional specific training is recommended for these things. Make sure you just stick with utilizing this tactic only. Don't go beyond your scope of practice. I do have an EMT friend that he said that the first thing he does, because he was in the military, if he ever suspected that arterial bleeding, is to take his knee and jam it into their thigh as hard as he can, proximal to the bleeding location. And that pressure with his knee into the thigh is going to slow down that bleeding. That way he can put direct pressure on the wound, right? And then while he creates his tourniquet, he can use his knee to hold that pressure until that tourniquet's in place and then apply pressure with that then too. So that's a new way of course, utilizing your tactics. Again, I'm not showing you how to be certified in that way. we want to stick with just using our simple old triangular bandages to create a tourniquet and hold that in place. Watch more videos, learn more information through the American Red Cross on utilizing manufactured tourniquets if you choose to. Let's see here, other things now too. Okay, how long, right? How long do we try to resuscitate somebody? Okay, this is the last thing we're going to cover here. Well, survival depends largely on what caused the heart to stop. So if there's a direct injury to the heart, there's really little chance of survival. But other things then too, we might be able to help improve their chances of survival. Say it was a drowning incident, suffocation, hypothermia, we got them breathing again. They're more likely to survive than having some kind of direct injury to the heart, like maybe they took a gunshot or something like that, right? So we have to know that our efforts are only going to be as good as the overall outcome of that person. How severe is their injury? We can't always let that be on us that we couldn't save the person, but we still want to give the best care possible. So we're going to continue CPR until we see obvious signs of life, such as breathing. We're going to also continue CPR and if we get a relief by another responder. We have an EMT person arrive and take over. Maybe we are too exhausted to continue or the scene becomes unsafe. But again, we should never discontinue CPR. If the person dies or is found dead, take the steps to decrease the intensity of the emotional experience. So try to keep yourself calm. Try to notify authorities or others and protect the body. Document and do not disturb the area, because again, there might have to be some kind of investigation go on if it was like a murder scene or something that you came upon. Again, do as much good as possible with your skills provided. When in doubt, call 911. Jump back into one more thing with wilderness disasters. We have to think about protection of the environment. There are 4 basic types of shelters. We have natural, artificial, snow, and then tents we can make, right? So a natural would be like a cliff overhanging. We would never want to we would never want to build a fire where there's trees above us that have snow on them, because again, the snow could melt and fall on our fire. So be aware of your surroundings, what's above you too. An artificial shelter would be, for instance, times when we take like a tent and we create an overhang so it protects us against the wind or snow or rain. And then we could also make an igloo, technically speaking, out of a snow embankment. We can create an open area in the snow. We also want to make sure we have an entrance and exit hole so air can flow through those places. We can also use a car as a shelter, believe it or not. It's actually one of the better shelters we can utilize. For places when it's very cold, for the heater, we want to run the car for maybe 15 to 20 minutes at a time each hour. Again, you want to reserve your fuel as much as possible. We also want to make sure there's no snow or ice blocking the exhaust pipe of the vehicle, first and foremost, because that can cause gases to stay inside the vehicle or disrupt the combustion of the vehicle, and the vehicle could stop running altogether. And then also leave your windows open ever so slightly just to keep good oxygen coming into you and keep it ventilated. Let's see, let's go ahead and put it all together. I have one scenario for you and we will call it a day, all right? Here's your scenario. You are riding on a bike trail. You are tired but relaxed. You must have ridden at least 10 miles. Then you round a sharp curve. You abruptly swerve to avoid a young woman sprawled in the middle of the path. She appears to have been rollerblading and fallen. She is in obvious pain and is cradling her arm and it's bent close to her chest. You stop your bike. You would like to help. How do you respond? Well, this one's pretty simple. Is it life-threatening or non-life-threatening? Most likely it's non-life-threatening. Again, it said she was rollerblading on a bike path. Those are usually dirt, but hey, maybe she's got those special rollerblades. Anyway, since she's in obvious pain cradling her arm, right, we want to go up to her and say, hey, I'm certified in first aid. May I help you? Get their name, tell them your name, right, and start to give them the best care possible. Since you had to swerve abruptly to get away from this person, you probably want to move the person first and foremost out of that dangerous situation. So that'd be the time to drag them if necessary, without hurting their arm, of course, or get them to walk and move to a position where they're safe. We want to check their head, of course, because they might have hit their head too, but we're primarily concerned about the injury that they're howling in pain with. Now, is this life-threatening? Most likely not with an arm injury. Maybe has a shoulder dislocation, maybe tore a rotator cuff, maybe hurt their elbow. Not really sure at the moment because we haven't been able to ask enough questions. But the main thing is that we move the person from the scene so they're in a safe position. Now we can go ahead and appropriately care for those conditions. We might want to call 911, but more than likely we're going to want to take a triangular bandage and create some kind of sling and or splint as well to make sure the arm is cradled in the most comfortable position possible without moving that person's arm from where they are holding it. That's usually the safest, most comfortable position is where they're holding it. So try to keep that arm in that position found. And that will do it for this last video that we have for CPR class, for American Red Cross First Aid class. So do be aware that this being the last video, I will be posting now a document with 30 questions. You need to answer all 30 of those questions, multiple choice, and submit that via email to me. Again, that is lowercase fog0845@yahoo.com. Look for that document on Blackboard. Make sure you answer those questions and then send them directly to me by email, not through Blackboard, please. I'll be able to get those more quickly than that way and get you your grades back more appropriately. That will be due, okay, just since today is the 28th of April, okay, you will get till Friday this week to send me that information for your first aid exam. That means it is due on this Friday specifically at 5 p.m., okay, 5 p.m. Central Time. Anything after that is considered late. If it is sent to me after that time frame of 5 p.m. on Friday, if it's sent by Sunday, I'll only give you a 10% decrease in your grade for that assignment. Anything later than that will receive a 0 and you'll be kicked out of the class for the rest of the semester. Also be prepared. May 5th is our final exam day. So the morning of May 5th, okay, what I will be doing is posting also the final exam through Blackboard. You will answer those questions, again, multiple choice, some will be short answer, and you will send me that document via email as well back to me, and I will have your grades back to you by the 7th that week then too. So finals will be done. If you have any questions, concerns, comments, like usual, email me, call me, text me, whatever you need. Thank you so much. It's been a great, wonderful semester. I hope to make more of these videos for you guys so you can really brush up on your skills. Thank you again. It's been wonderful. Take care.